If you're doing life with your church, that's something that the devil hates to see because those people are unstoppable.
So is it safe to say that one way the devil works is by placing us in isolation?
Absolutely. I'm pointing people to Jesus. He's the one that's going to help your marriage. He's the one that's going to help your job situation. He's the one that's going to help you with your kids. He's the one that's going to help you to be a better dad, a better husband, a better friend, a better follower. That's all Jesus.
I would argue that it's harder sometimes as a Christian because there are certain things, especially if you came from living in a world of sin.
Yeah.
You can't do those anymore, and those things are fun. There's a reason why you did it.
So much. There's so much sex trafficking going on that people don't even realize it's under their nose. It's in every town, in every state. And sometimes they're like 2 and 3 steps ahead of the law.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Reborn Experience. I'm your host, Ian Wolf, and today I have the pleasure of being with Pastor David Slusher. David, thank you for coming on.
You bet, man. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I just want to thank you for driving out here to lovely Marshall, Missouri. So it is good to have you, and this is the church that I serve in, Gill Memorial Baptist Church.
Okay, Gill Memorial Baptist Church in Marshall, Missouri.
Yes.
So how long have you been a pastor here for?
So in July, it will be 15 years that I've been here. Gill Memorial Baptist Church, just kind of a little backstory because people, ask about the name quite a bit. We were a plant from First Baptist Marshall back in 1957. So let's see, I think it was in the 30s. Everett Gill was the pastor at First Baptist Marshall, and he had the idea of planting another church in Marshall. So at that time, this would have been the edge of town where we're at. So through planning and prayer and everything, it actually took shape in 1957. It started out as Gill Memorial Chapel, and then we became a church in 1957. So the name Gill Memorial is after Everett Gill, who it was his idea to plant the church. So that's why we exist, not because of a church split.
Okay, and was Everett Gill a pastor or just a church planter?
He was the pastor at First Baptist Marshall.
Okay.
So, and it was his, I don't want to say idea, but it was his, what God laid on his heart to do to plant another church in Marshall, Missouri at the time at the edge of town.
Okay.
So that's how we came into existence.
All right. For those of them who don't know, what is Marshall, Missouri around, and what's the population like?
Yeah. So population is floats around 13,000 and has since its inception in the 1800s. I think it was the late 1800s when Marshall became a town. And it's kind of interesting because it's never really grown and it's never really decreased. It like grows by a few hundred and decreases by a few hundred ever since it became a town. So we are about an hour and 20 minutes east of Kansas City. We're about 45 minutes west of Columbia, Missouri. And we are 26 miles north of Sedalia, Missouri. And we're located just 8 miles north of I-70.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of construction going on I-70 right now for those who are around the area.
Yeah.
But okay, so David, I'd like to hear a little bit more about you as a pastor, hear your story with Jesus, and then we can get into some other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I gave my life to Christ in it was Tuesday, July 9th, 1996 at my girlfriend's house. Rachel and I had met. I was going to school at UNLV, and she came out there to visit a friend of hers, which we had a mutual friend, because her friend's boyfriend came out to visit me because he was a pilot, and he wanted to move somewhere where they had unlimited ceiling. So something really important for pilots, I guess. So he decided that he was going to move out there. So she came out to visit her friend, which was his girlfriend at the time, and that's how I got to know my wife. So we kind of started a friendship relationship during that time, and I remember the first time that she took me to church. I thought, I'm never going back to this. This is whack. I grew up as a C&E Catholic. So, and for those of you who don't know that is, all Catholics know what that is. We go to church on Christmas and Easter. So,
I know, I grew up Catholic.
yeah. So, Rachel and I started dating. And then I don't know, I was not really chasing a degree when I went to college. I just went to college because that's what people do. I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I moved back here to Kansas City and got to know Rachel's family more. So it was a Tuesday night. Her parents had decided to have this barbecue and invite me over and other people too. And so that's where I met her, who was Rachel's youth pastor, and his name was Morris Gleiser. And it was that night where I was walking into the kitchen. I'll never forget, because I was walking through the living room, and when I met him, hey, how you doing? And he started asking me some questions, and I said, listen, I'm from the Show Me State. I said, if you want to open a Bible and show me some stuff, that I'll look at it, but if you're just gonna tell me stuff, then that's not. And he's like, dude, my Bible's in the car. So we went out into the driveway, and he would open it up, and he's like, read this, what's it say? And I'm like, well, it says I'm a sinner. And then he'd flip some pages and take me down Romans Road, and he's like, now read this, what's it say to you? And I said, well, it tells me I need Jesus. And he's like, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want Jesus. So
Wow.
Yeah, so that night I gave my life to Christ, and it's been pretty amazing ever since. When I was 22 when I gave my life to Christ, and didn't grow up in the church. Wasn't a great person before that. Didn't have a colorful past, if you will. But Jesus came in and just changed me from the inside out. And so jump forward about, I don't know, 5 years. We had moved to Warrensburg after we got married, and Rachel was finishing up her degree. I was going to get my degree in fire science. I wanted to be a fireman. So as we were going to school, they dropped that degree. So I was like, well, I'll just kind of do communication or whatever. I didn't know. Again, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. And so my wife ended up graduating with a teaching degree. But during that time, I really felt God calling me into the ministry. We had such a great church in Warrensburg, First Baptist Warrensburg. Bob Engel was my pastor, and one of the pastors on staff. But Bob had a huge impact in my life. He really mentored me, and Dennis was another pastor on staff. Really mentored me, and I remember that one of the Sundays. I came forward. I was just in tears, and I went to Dennis and I said, man, God's calling me into the ministry. And he said, Dave, some people come willingly and some people are drug into it. And I felt like I was resisting, because I'll be honest with you, I hate school. I always have. I just don't care for it. And and I'm not one of my problems is I'm a nonconformist. So I feel like school is, okay, write this paper. Well, you're just wanting me to regurgitate someone else's work and put it in my name. And so I just have kind of some issues with some of that stuff, which is
Sure.
kind of dumb, but it's how I justify me not wanting to do it.
Sure, I get it.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so I felt the call to go into the ministry, and I remember, Bob really helped me, and Larry Gingrich was a huge help in my life, and they just grabbed me up and said, "Okay, let's go do hospital visits. Okay, let's go do this. Let's go do that." And then, I preached my first sermon there in 2000. It was a Super Bowl Sunday, Tom Brady's first victory of a Super Bowl, beating the Tennessee Titans.
Hey, quick word from today's sponsor, Christ Coffee. Every single order, 100% of the $5 shipping charge goes directly to organizations rescuing children from sex trafficking. Groups like Destiny Rescue, A21, and the Tim Tebow Foundation. And if your order hits $65 or more, Christ Coffee matches it. So $10 per shipment goes to the rescue. The beans are roasted and shipped the same day, so every bag is as fresh as it gets. Smooth, bold, no bitterness. And every cup funds rescue work. Head to Christ.coffee and use my code REBORN10 for 10% off. That's Christ.coffee, code REBORN10.
And that's the first day you ever preached?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So we had a game watching party, because you can't say Super Bowl party. So we had a game watching party, and so for the halftime, myself and a buddy of mine, Warren Colbank, who felt led to go into the ministry also, he led the worship, and I did the preaching, and it was probably the worst sermon ever.
Why do you say that?
Because I didn't really know what I was doing, and it's like what you have on paper and you try to articulate it, and you've never done that before. It takes time to, just like anything, like when you start your first podcast. I guarantee this one's better than the first one you did. You know what I'm saying? Because
yes.
Yeah, you're honing your craft. So,
man, I've had so many cringy episodes, and even now I've done it for about a year, a little over a year.
Yeah.
I bet you 5 years from now, I'll look back at stuff right now and I'll think, man, like that wasn't very good. So like it's all relative to time and experience. Like right now, this is good compared to a year ago, but 5 years from now, I may look back at this and say like, man, Ian, like you didn't have a lot of skills at that time.
Yeah. So this being my first podcast, you're probably thinking this is kind of cringy right now.
I'm not thinking that. I'm not thinking that. But okay, so you said a lot there, and I'm trying to unpack some of this. A few questions come to mind.
Yeah.
First, you mentioned something about how some people in ministry they feel called. Others they feel called, but they don't want to do it, but they go into it unwillingly because that's where the Lord is leading them to. And I've heard this before. I've heard how some pastors, when they were called, they didn't want to.
And it sounds like that, but that's how it's described. But that's not really how it is. It's like, okay. So I wanted to. I felt God. I mean, and I know God was laying this on my heart, because I remember one night in bed, just out of the blue, Rachel turned to me and she said, she asked me, she's like, do you want to be a pastor? And I was like, yes, but I didn't want to tell her that, because my thought was, okay, it's like, yeah, I want to do this, but I don't know how to do this, and I'm like, I've got a baby, a wife, a mortgage. How am I going to do this? So, but man, God was really just pulling me to do it. So it wasn't that I didn't want to do it. I just didn't see how I could do it. So that's why I was really reluctant to do it.
For the financial side of it, particularly?
Well, just everything. I didn't know what that looked like. Like because I thought, how could I go to school? How could I do this? I just didn't see how any of that was going to work, and so it made it really difficult for me to surrender, to say, okay, God, I'm all in, and that's where, if God is leading you to something, you don't need to figure it out. You just need to surrender, and that's the thing. That's what holds us back many times, because we feel that God is calling us to maybe start a podcast or go into the ministry or start a preschool or whatever it is. And the first thing we look at is like, well, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what to do, but that's when we just say, okay, God, I don't need to figure it out. I just need to be obedient to you. And that's what it was in my life. Like, I didn't understand how that was going to work. But I just said, oh, okay, I'll do it. And, from that time to the time that I pastored my first church, there was some ups and downs in there. Like, I surrendered to the ministry, but the first church that wanted to hire me, and it was the craziest thing. They called me and they said, yeah, you were recommended to us. We want to interview you to be our pastor. And it was just it was out in the middle of nowhere. And I remember going out there thinking, I've never preached a sermon in my life. Why would they want to hire me as their pastor?
Do you know who it was who recommended you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a guy named Pete that was a member of our church, but he would do supply preaching and things like that. So he gave him my name. And I tell you what, so I walked around that church and interviewed, and I left there thinking, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And so the first thing that I did, I talked to friends, and I said, this church is calling me to be their pastor. And did it, and they said, well, how are you going to do that? You're going to try to go to school. Cause at the time I was like, I'm going to try to go to seminary. So like, and they're like, I just don't think that you'll be able to do it. And so that's what the people around me said. Good, godly Christians, said, man, Dave, I don't know if you're going to have the time to do it, because you're working, you're this, you're that, and then you're driving up to Kansas City to go to school. Man, I just don't see how you're going to do it. And so,
so at this time you were still working a full-time job and doing seminary?
Yes, I hadn't started seminary yet, but yes, okay. I was working a full-time job, and I was going to be starting seminary probably in the spring or the fall. I can't remember whatever semester I started with at first. But I got to say, I didn't pray about it. I listened to people around me, and they wanted me to come the following Sunday and preach. And so I told them, no, I wasn't interested. And when I did that, it was like a door had slammed shut.
As in you had disobeyed the Lord?
Yes. Yeah. Because I was seeking advice from people with good intentions for me, who loved me, who were looking at my circumstances and my situation, and they're saying, it just doesn't look like it's going to work for you. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to listen to you. But never once did I take that to the Lord in prayer. So that was a big problem for me. And
right.
Then once that door shut, I mean, it shut. And I can tell you, there was like about a year in there where I was literally kind of just miserable because I knew that this was a door that God was opening, and I was too afraid to go through it. And instead of going to the Lord and saying, God, I'm afraid, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And I know what God would have done. He would have said, no, I got you. You know, we're going to do this together. You know, this is going to be a great place for you to cut your teeth and, you know, and start learning. And, you know, so I had like a year in between there where I felt just the wilderness that I was in. And I'll never forget, we lived north of Warrensburg at that time, just off Highway 13. So our house, we had about an acre of land, and I would push mow the whole thing. I'd push mow, you know, and it'd take me about 4 hours to get my grass cut. Cutting an acre with 21-inch deck, push mowing the whole thing, and weed eating and that.
Did you ever consider a riding mower?
I did, but I was pretty young at the time, and I felt they were too slow. And that was before zero turns.
Okay.
So, especially before I could afford a zero turn. So, but anyway, I would spend that time. I gladly did it because I would spend that time in prayer. And I'll never forget, I was finishing up, and I was putting my mower in the shed, and I said, God, I know that was an opportunity that you gave me. And I said, I know that I blew it. And I asked for forgiveness, and I said, God, if you will give me another chance, I said, I won't turn it down. And as I was pushing my mower into the shed, my wife Rachel came out, and she said, hey, Dave, someone's on the phone. They want you to preach.
No way.
Yep. Seriously. It was amazing. You know, it was amazing. And from that moment on, if someone asked me to preach, I was like, yes, I'll do it. And I was preaching probably about 3 Sundays out of the month after that. And it was just boom, 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 boom. So, yeah. And then you know, the first church I got hired on was Quarles Baptist Church, just north of Clinton, Missouri. And I was there for 6 years.
Okay, I want to backtrack real quick.
Yeah.
And really kind of sit and explore in something you mentioned. So you go to these godly friends, people who you trust. They're following the Lord. They love Jesus. And you go to them for advice, and they're skeptical, not sure if you can make it work, understandably so, because you have that full-time job. You have a family. You're about to start seminary in Kansas City, which wasn't necessarily close to where you were. And they're not sure if you can make it work with preaching. And again, it sounds like they had great intentions.
They did.
But I don't know exactly where I want to go with this, but I do want to sit in that and discuss the importance of prayer and also discernment, because I can say in my life sometimes there have been times where, on the one hand, I've tried to do things on my own, and I haven't sought out wise counsel. And it's backfired on me. I haven't made the right decisions. And in those moments, I wish I had sought out wise counsel. But then there have been other times where I have sought out that wise counsel, just like you did, but maybe a similar situation where perhaps with best intention, they didn't give the advice that was best for me. And if I had more so just sought out that discernment and prayer, I would have made a different decision that might have been better. So I don't necessarily have a specific question, but yeah, like that's kind of a wrestle. Do you have any advice for someone who they might have a critical decision to make right here?
Yes. Yeah. So absolutely, the first thing you do is take it to the Lord. That's the first thing that you do.
How do they do that?
Yeah. So what I did not do when I left that church that night, I was kind of in a whirlwind, you know, because the fact that a church wanted me to be their pastor, and that was something new for me, and I didn't know what that was going to look like, and you know, my head was spinning. And so the first thing I did was just go to some friends and say, man, can you believe that? And they're, and again, they're great people. They loved me. They cared for me. They were people that I looked to for advice, but they're not to be the first people that I go to. The first person that I was to go to, I should have went to the Lord in prayer about it. I should have probably sat down after that. I should have probably sat down with my pastor and said, Bob, this is what I feel like God is calling me to do, but, I don't know how I'm going to do it. I should have sat down with someone who kind of had gone through maybe the same type of thing, because every pastor, when you take on your first church, when God calls you to your first church, it's not like, oh yeah, I got this, man, it's in the bag. No, you're like, the Bible's pretty clear. There's not many people should go into the ministry.
And they will be judged and held to a higher standard by the Lord.
As Christians, we are never done growing. At Elevated Faith, their products serve as a daily reminder to constantly strive for elevated faith, a deeper relationship with God, and to share our faith with other people. Christian apparel for men, women, and the kids. But it doesn't end there. Elevated Faith creates a variety of other Christian products, from jewelry, phone cases, and even home decor. At Elevated Faith, they are not in it for the bag. In 2025, over $85,000 were given to faith-based charities and organizations around the world, such as Feeding America, Compassion, and God Behind Bars. With over 80,000 five-star reviews, the proof is in the pudding. Go shop at elevatedfaith.com and use code IWOLF15 at checkout for 15% off your order. That's IWOLFF15, IWOLF15 for 15% off your next order.
Yes, exactly. So, so that's something that, people really need to think about. But getting back to it, I should have really prayed about it first and sought pastoral counsel first instead of my friends. Because listen, I don't care who you are. Our friends are great people. And most of the time our friends are going to tell us what we want to hear. It's just how it is, Now, if they see us messing up and things, they're going to be like, whoa, hey, we have friends like that are going to, hold us, put our feet to the fire. But a lot of times we're like, hey, I'm kind of, what do you think about this? I think da-da-da-da. They're going to be like, yeah, I think that's about right. They're going to agree with us.
Yeah, there's still a level of bias with best intentions.
Yes. Yeah. So I think it's, when you're, whatever that decision is that you need to make, I think you should first and foremost pray about it. And then I think you should seek advice from a pastor who doesn't have a dog in the fight.
That makes sense. Now, I do want to kind of throw in a wrench in there. So you said pray and seek pastoral advice. When someone is praying, and this question would be more so aimed to people who are not currently following the Lord, or they're still, you could say, babies or infants in Christ, early in their faith. How can they discern the voice of the Lord between the voice of the evil one? And I can speak for myself. Maybe I'm speaking for others too when I say that there have been times when I've gone to prayer and I think something is from the Lord, but it's like in 1 Corinthians, it's that angel of light. It's essentially the evil one in disguise.
Yeah.
And it seemed like the Lord, but it wasn't from the Lord. And that's a really scary thing because the devil can also be very, very deceptive as well and appear as an angel. And we even look at different religions, like the origin of Islam, for instance. The devil came as an angel of light to Muhammad.
Yeah.
And it might have been Joseph Smith as well, founder of, is he Jehovah Witness or is he Mormon?
No, Joseph Smith is Mormon.
But regardless.
The plates. Yeah. Yeah.
Discernment, though, what between the Lord and the evil one?
It's a good question, and but it's not an easy one to answer because you and this is one of the things that I see Christians doing oftentimes. They're replacing one or the other. Like I'm going to spend a ton of time in prayer, but then they're not spending enough time in the Word. Or I'm going to spend a ton of time in the Word, but I'm not spending enough time in prayer. It's like when you have decisions that you make, you want to, you want the whole trifecta. You want to bathe it in prayer. You want to be saturated in the Word, and you want to have good spiritual counsel around you. If like the camera right now is sitting on a tripod. If we take one leg away, what's going to happen?
It'll fall over.
Yes, exactly. So that's kind of what you need to do as a person who is someone who is just newly walking in the Lord. It's never one or the other. You have to have it all. And I'm talking big decisions, but at the same time, I'm a person that believes, if you're going to hang a picture in the living room, I think you ought to pray about it first. And people that, well, that's just silly. No, because your life you need to be depending on the Lord for everything. And if we have this attitude, well, I don't need to depend on the Lord for that. That's a simple thing. Well, that's a cancer that's going to creep into other areas of your life. So that's why I say, even with the most basic things, we need to be praying about it. We need to be depending on the Lord. We need to be letting him guide us. And I think that's one thing, if I was to tell a new believer, would be, listen, you don't just go to the Lord with tough decisions. You go to the Lord with every decision. So if you want that discernment, you have to spend time with them. So if you're not going to spend time with the Lord and you're not going to spend time about praying about circumstances and situations going on in your life, and then you're like, oh, I get this big decision, man. I don't know what to do. So now I'm going to go to the Lord. Well, it's going to be harder to hear the voice because you're not recognizing it, because you haven't been spending time with him. You haven't been praying about the other decisions, Because I'll be honest with you, like as a pastor, I've had churches call me, offer me more money, wanting me to be the pastor. And to be honest with you, what makes more sense? It makes more sense to go somewhere to make more money.
Sure.
So I can provide for my family more. But, after praying about it, and seeking God, because and this has always been my stance. Any church can call me at any time and interview me. I have no problem with that. I will interview for any position, anytime. If a church calls me, yeah, I'll interview for it. I'm going to pray about it and that, and but I'll interview. But just because I'm going to go to the interview doesn't mean you can set a bag of cash on the table and be like, okay, I'm going for it. Because one of the last churches I went to do an interview, and they offered me more money, but it wasn't where God wanted me to be, and I hated telling them no.
Sure.
Not because I wanted the money, but because I'm like, I felt like I was hurting their feelings, but I'm like, God's just not leading me on this,
Two things. One, why interview in the first place if you're not sure you would want to accept that job? So like hypothetically, you go through this interview process, they like you, they want to bring you on, but the Lord isn't leading you there. My first question would be, why interview in the first place?
So that's a good question. A lot of times when these interviews will come up, I haven't thought about it. I haven't prayed about it, because I'm not, in my daily prayer, I'm not like, God, get me out of Gill, but I'm just like, one of my prayers is anywhere, anytime, any cost. God, if you called me tomorrow to go to wherever, I'll go. I'm only going to go when he calls me to go. So I don't throw my resume out. I don't do this. I don't do stuff like that. And not that, there's times it's, in ministry's hard. And some people don't understand that. They just think we work on Sunday. But sometimes, I'm like, man, I would kill to be a factory worker right now.
Really?
Yeah, because you can just go to work, do your job, and go home, and that's it. But ministry, it never stops. It never stops. You're always doing it. And I don't say that like, oh, I need a break. Sometimes I find myself working harder on someone's marriage than they are. I find myself working harder at someone's finances than they are. I find so it can be, I don't want to say a drain, but it can take a lot out of you. So here's getting back to the question that you had.
Real quick, I just want to make a point on something you said a little bit earlier about you're not swayed by the money. You can interview, but if another church were to place a bag of cash on the table or whatever, that's just because they offer you more money, that's not going to get you to go to a different church. I just want to say I think that a lot of people would really respect that.
Yeah.
Because some people, either they've experienced church hurt or they have a misconception of what the church is really like.
Yeah.
And so for you to strictly abide in the Lord, that's how every pastor should conduct themselves. And like I said, I'm sure a lot of people can really respect that.
Yeah. So, but getting back to why would I interview? Because a lot of times, and it's not like it happens every week, So, but if I'm not looking to leave, but there are times when like a church may contact me and say, hey, I've kind of had you, we've heard about you and someone recommended you, blah, 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 blah. We'd like to interview you. So my thought is when someone says that to me, I'm like, okay, God, maybe you're opening a door. So I will go to an interview, but I will begin praying about it. And my wife and we will begin praying about it. And, our thing is like, if we're called to go, we're going to go. We're not going to be like, oh, we just had this happen or we just had that happen. So, we've got a good thing going here, so we're not going to go. So my thought is with an interview process, like if someone calls me and says, Dave, we've been praying about it and we've heard some of your sermons online. We'd like to talk with you. I'm open to that because my thing is like, I'll go through an interview and then it's during that process and actually before, because once they say, hey, we want to interview you next Tuesday or next month, then I'm going to start going through that prayer process. Now, I will tell you this. If God plainly lays it on me, you're not doing this, then I won't do it. But there hasn't been that time. But after going through interviews and that, I'm like, yeah, nope. This isn't what God is calling me to do. One of my dreams was I always wanted to be able to work on staff with Bob Engel. He was my pastor. He's someone that I had admired and I've always been really close with him because, like I said, he really helped me and he invested in me. And so I was like, one day I would like to work on staff with him. And we've had some conversations, but God wasn't leading me that way. He's like, because I went there because he's in St. Louis now at Waypoint. So
Waypoint St. Charles? Or
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's the main. I guess he's the main lead pastor, executive pastor.
Okay, yeah.
He's
So
he's a big honcho.
gotcha.
So
His son is at Waypoint Wentzville, and
Adam.
Yes, I've been to Waypoint Wentzville a few times. Good church. I like it.
Yeah. So I remember Adam when he was little bitty.
Wow.
Yeah. So and there was an opportunity. We talked about an opportunity for me to be on staff, and it just wasn't where God was leading me. And if there was a place I was going to go to, it would have been to be with my mentor at Waypoint.
Sure.
But it wasn't a door that God was opening. I went to the interview, and he kind of laid out the plan that he had, and how he wanted to use me in that. So, and it was exciting, but it just wasn't where God was calling me. So sometimes you don't know until you hear, and then you begin to pray about it. And I'm like, God, really? I mean, like, I'd love to be a part of the team, but he was like, nah, you're part of my team. That's the only team that matters right now. So.
Yeah, there have been so many times I've really wanted to do something, and I thought, man, like this seems like a great plan. This even seems like it'd be something from you.
Yeah.
So much fruit could be produced from this, but it's just not the direction or not the place.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was I going to ask you next? Okay, so you've emphasized the importance of someone having a pastor to go to if they need discernment, they're struggling. What if someone doesn't have that? What if someone doesn't have a home church, or maybe someone goes to a very large church and it's just not feasible for everyone in the congregation to like have their pastor's number and be able to hit them up or something like that? What if someone doesn't have that?
Yeah. And that's common. And I don't want to step on anyone's toes, but I'm just going to be really honest. There's more preachers out there than there are pastors.
What's the difference?
A preacher will preach a sermon. A pastor will be there for the people. If you find a bulletin in this church, there's one over there. We don't need to get it, but if you find a bulletin, the first thing you're going to see when you open that bulletin, you're going to see my name and my cell phone number. If I'm not readily available to this church, what am I doing? What's the point? I mean, a pastor is someone who is to care for their church. Now, listen, I love big churches. I'd like to be a pastor of a big church, but I think churches need to have a small church mentality, regardless of how big your church is. These people that are coming here, they need to be loved on. They need to be cared for. They need to be ministered to. You can't minister to people if they can't connect with you, if they can't get a hold of you.
So you're saying it's a lot more than just preaching to them on Sundays, telling them
yes.
Speaking the word of God, telling them what they need to do better, but it doesn't just end there.
Yeah. So you're an athlete.
Yes.
Baseball player.
Yes.
So you're manager, coach throughout the week as you go to practice, telling you how to do, what to do, da-da-da-da-da. So then at game time, does he all right, boys, we practice everything. You know what to do. I'm going to Applebee's. You guys let me know how the game turns out.
No, coach is always there making in-game adjustments.
So so what's going on during the game? You're struggling. You're going to talk to the coach, right?
Right, but I can't if he's at Applebee's.
Exactly. So that's the thing. I'm the coach of this team at Gill Memorial Baptist Church. And they're on the playing field. When they walk out of this sanctuary, they're heading to the playing field. They're out there witnessing, and they're out there being the hands and feet of Jesus. And if they can't talk to the coach and get a hold of the coach, then I'm failing them. They're not failing me. I'm failing them. If you're a pastor of a mega church, and I get it, I understand the demands of what it is to be a pastor. I do. And I know the more numbers, the greater the demand. So instead of, you need to be having a care team to reach out, to these people. I mean, deacons and, and other staff members and things like that, because people need connections. They need a personal connection. This is what drives me crazy about Christianity. We tell people all the time, what kind of relationship you need to have with Christ?
An intimate one?
Personal one.
Okay.
Intimate, personal. You have to have a personal relationship. Well, you need to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, but don't bother me on my free time. Come on, man. I mean, do you see the hypocrisy in that?
I do, and I see what you meant earlier when you said that preaching or being a pastor, it's more than just showing up on Sunday for an hour or a few hours and then that's it. It's a never-ending, continuous process.
Yeah. Are you tired of low-quality beverages that support shady entities? Then look no further than Forgiven Energy. Every can of Forgiven delivers 200 milligrams of natural caffeine with 0 sugar and none of those junky fillers that other brands sneak in. Loaded with L-theanine and B vitamins, Forgiven delivers a smooth energy, free of the jitters and plummets of energy that you may have experienced elsewhere. Created for those pursuing purpose through discipline and faith. Right now, you could build a 12-pack bundle for 20% off, and your shipping is free on orders over $50. With 5 refreshing flavors to choose from, where else would you go for a boost of energy? Go shop at forgiven.com/reborn10 and use code reborn10 at checkout for 10% off your next order. Forgiven, that's spelled 4GVN. That is 4GVN. Forgiven.com/reborn10 for 10% off your next order.
And my thing is, I love being a pastor. I could do without the preaching, but I love being a pastor. I'm in the hospital. I'm on the ball field. I'm at plays. I'm at recitals because this is my family. What am I doing if I'm not ministering to them? And I'm just here's our Sunday preaching. See you next Sunday. The churches that succeed are the churches that do life together.
Say that one more time.
The churches that succeed are the churches that do life together. When you have a church and people come in and they sit down and they handshake and they're all good and you're worshiping, you're singing, and all that's great. But then you leave and there's no interaction after that, you're not doing life together. This is a struggle that every church has. Like, okay, we're going to do life groups, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to try to do this. That's what churches are wanting to do. They're wanting to do most churches, I would say. They're wanting to do more than just Sunday, more than just Wednesday. It's like if you're doing life with your church, man, that's something that the devil hates to see, because those people are unstoppable.
So is it safe to say that one way the devil works is by placing us in isolation? Absolutely.
And and I know this is going on social media, but social media is one of the biggest enemies.
I think you're right.
Social media, what social media has done is it has divided people. So now, it used to be without social media, you were around people, whether you agreed with them or didn't, or disagreed with them. You would talk, you would have disagreements and blah, 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 whatever it is. You would have discussions about things. You would listen to their side, and they would listen to your side. And you may be like, well, we don't 100% agree, but we can get along and da 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 da. Well, now it's not that way at all.
You have a lot of keyboard warriors out there.
Yeah, and you can just surround yourself with like-minded people.
What's that called? An echo chamber?
Yeah. And it's great for for us in the church. Yes, we want to be around like-minded people who love the Lord. But again, when we step out of the church, we're stepping onto the mission field. It's time to go to battle. It's time to be the hands and feet of Jesus. It's not time to take our little group and just go all over and say, look at us. But it's time to start interacting with people that we disagree with, people that we dislike.
It's so important. And I know some Christians who are phenomenal people. They love Jesus. They don't right now have the skills to defend their faith. So when they're putting on their bootstraps and they go out into the mission field, they don't really know how to defend that. And that's a very important skill.
And one of the things that the Christians have begun to do is the Christians. What we have begun to do is we sit around and complain about things, but then don't do anything about it. And we're like, God, you need to take care of this. God, you need to do this. And God's like, that's what you're for. That's why you're here. That's why you were created. We had a Pride Fest in Marshall, Missouri.
LGBTQ Pride Fest? Okay.
Yeah. And they were gearing it towards children. Oh, child friendly. Oh, this, that, and the
I think
other.
that is so sick.
Yeah, it's horrible. But what did the church community do? Nothing. They complained. They sat around and complained. In our church, we went to the we went to City Hall and with two other churches. And that's really sad because in this town, there's a lot more than 3 churches. So there was, I'm not going to name them, but there was our church and then 2 other churches. And we stood up for what we believe and why we think this was a bad idea. And man, I was obliterated online. I mean, they tore me up. I was called everything but a white man. And that's okay, because a buddy of mine who's also serves as a youth pastor here at Gill Memorial Baptist Church, Rob Kennard, awesome guy. He called me. He's like, Dave. He's like, I'm gonna comment on some of these stuff. I'm like, no, you're not. I said, Rob, don't. I said, don't ever swing at pitches in the dirt. They're not worth it. I said, just let it go. So what I said. I said, I'm not just going to complain about this. So I'm going to do something. So I'm organizing the Marshall Faith and Family Fest, and it's going to be on June 13th, Saturday, June 13th. And I'm reaching out to vendors and stuff like that. And it is not, I want to say this, it is not a Gill Memorial thing. This is something that I'm wanting to do to proclaim the name of Jesus in this community. I want like-minded churches to be involved in it, to have booths and stuff like that, so they can share about their church, so that they can invite people to their church. But I don't want to put any of our pastors in this town on center stage, because it's not about look at Gill. It's not about look at this church, look at that church. It's about, hey, guys, we love Jesus, and we're pointing people to Jesus.
I like that. You're exalting Jesus, not any person. I love that. And I will put the information of that into the description of the episode. So
yeah, awesome.
What's it called again?
It is Marshall Faith and Family Fest, and it's June 13th, and it's going to be at the Marshall City Square, on our square, and it will be from noon to 5.
That's awesome, Dave. I like how you guys are really taking initiative to do something good. I think it's super disturbing how I've seen some videos on Instagram of these drag queens going into libraries or elementary schools, and they're reading, pride books to these little kids, but yet on the contrast, you couldn't read a Jesus-centered book to those kids. And I just think it's really disturbing how a lot of places, in particular the public schools, Jesus isn't in it, and quite frankly, God is taken out of that as well.
Yeah.
And that's difficult for me because I'm going back into school, and in the fall, and the plan is to get a degree in public education, and I want to be a light to the youth, but I can't outright talk about Jesus, and that's just really, really tough for me.
So some of that, and I'll tell you because I hear some of that, and honestly, it's kind of not true. And let me explain.
Okay.
So yes, you cannot stand up in your classroom and start preaching the Word of God. True. Can you bring your Bible as a teacher and have it sitting on your desk? Absolutely. You can absolutely do that. Missouri state law protects you and gives you that right. If a student comes up to you and asks you a question about that Bible, can you answer that question? Absolutely. When the student starts the questioning, you can answer it. So, and I've heard this so many times, and I've told our youth in this church, I'm like, you guys, you need to know the law, because I've had people come to me, we can't even have Jesus shirts on. Yes, you can. We can't have our Bible in school. Yes, you can. We can't pray in school. Yes, you can. You guys have to know the law, because you're just listening. And again, some of these people are good intentioned people, they don't know what's going on in the school district. They don't go to school board meetings. They don't know the law, but they instantly think that you can't do anything at all in the public school because of separation of church and state and blah, blah, blah. That's just not true. We need Christian teachers in the public school system.
I agree.
And we need them to know the law and know their rights. There's too many people that don't know their rights because they don't know the law. My recommendation to you is know the law before you go into that classroom. Know what you can do, know what you can say, know what you can't do, know what you can't say. Because there's not as many restrictions as you think. Now, I will say this, most everything has to be student-led. You can't say, okay, well, this is math class, so we're not going to talk about math, but we're just going to talk about Jesus. But a lot of times, like free periods, and I don't know what they call them, we used to call them homeroom, but and stuff like that, if a student asks you a question about your faith, you can talk about your faith as long as they are leading it. You can't tell them what they have to believe, but you can express, yes, I'm a Christian. Yeah, well, I've given my life to Christ, and here's why. And now you can't say, now you should too, but you can easily say, yeah, if you ever have any questions about it, you can ask me. So there's things with the law that that teachers need to know, that students need to know, so that they can't get pushed around.
Okay, that's really relieving. And you're right. There's definitely a lot of things that I need to educate myself on and freshen up on. So I want to change directions a little bit.
Okay.
Am I correct in saying that you own your own business? Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. So, you want to talk about it a little bit? You want me to talk about it? You want to keep going?
I'll just make the introduction, and
Okay.
then you can go from there. So, David, you own Christ Coffee, and I'm proud to be you would call it a brand ambassador for that.
Yes.
So why don't you tell the audience about Christ Coffee?
Yeah. So Christ Coffee, we've been in business probably about 3 years now. It's not going gangbusters, but it's not about making money. It's about making an impact. Now, with that being said, we would like to make money. We can't give it away for free. But when my son-in-law and I, when we started this company, the reason why we started this company was because we wanted to make an impact. There's so much sex trafficking going on that people don't even realize it's under their nose. It's in every town, in every state. And sometimes they're like 2 and 3 steps ahead of the law. And I don't mean that in the way like the law doesn't know what they're doing, but these people are sometimes assisted by
Wow.
by some government officials. So it really kind of started when my wife and we went to see The Sound of Freedom, and my daughter at the time, my youngest daughter at the time, was 5 years old. And if you've ever seen the movie, there's a girl in the movie. There's a boy and a girl in the movie where it kind of centers around that they're taken, and they're in this sex trafficking stuff, and it just kind of shows how it happens, how these kids can get taken into it, and it's just a horrible thing, and I've always told people about the movie. I'm like, it's a movie that everyone should see, but no one should have to watch it. It's just one of those things. It's gut wrenching, to be honest with you, because it exposes what needs to be exposed, and it's very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable. But at the time, my daughter was 5, and I just when I watched that, I just saw her precious little face, and it tore me up. When I left that theater, I was so mad. I mean, I was so mad, and I just remember thinking about that and praying about it, and and I thought, man, God, I don't want to just have anger that just amounts to nothing, but I want you to take this and give me a righteous anger. I want to do something. And so I talked with my son-in-law, and we kind of went, I had kind of thought about this for a while, and we kind of went back and forth, and I was like, what do you think about this? He's like, yeah, let's do it. So we did, he did a lot of the research when it came to who we were going to help fund. And then we originally started out with Destiny Rescue, and now we've added a couple others that are doing it. But one of the reasons why we went with Destiny Rescue from the jump was everyone in Destiny Rescue is they've went on a rescue, so they know what it's about. They're hands-on, and not only are they rescuing children and young women, but they're also helping them in their walk with Christ. They share Christ with them. They help them move past this and get to a better place. They don't just pluck a kid out and give him back to their family, because you find in a lot of situations that their family has sold them into sex trafficking.
Unbelievable.
It's unreal, even in America. So it's unbelievable.
That's something to me that's very striking, kind of being naive to it. It's easy for someone like myself and maybe some others to think, okay, well, that's going on in other countries. It's not really my problem, whatever. Like, I can pray about it, that yada, yada. But the fact that it's going on in our country, perhaps even in your state, and that's not something I don't really hear about it.
Yeah. And one of the, and this is shocking, but, like, say when the Super Bowl comes to a town, that's one of the biggest trafficking events.
How does that play out? How does that work?
They will ship kids in containers and that, in box trucks and that. And they're just, I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, if you start digging into it, it's quite disgusting, And when you look back, and this is not a political thing, but there's a reason why we need to protect our borders, because if you're letting anyone in, they're taking kids by the thousands. In the last administration, there was over 30,000 kids that they have no account of where they went, who took them, anything. They were literally on the border with white vans, and they would load them up, and someone would say, well, I'm with this. and they would take those kids, and no one knows what happens to them.
And also, too, if a child isn't a legal citizen, does that mean that they essentially can't be tracked? They can fly under the radar?
Yeah. And you have these coyotes that are taking these kids and selling them, and it's just horrible. And then there's, on the American side of it, it's such an ugly and evil and terrible thing. It's quite unbelievable. So Christ Coffee, our biggest thing with Christ Coffee is we want to have an impact. We want to fight this fight, and that was that's why we started it. I'm like, how can we be involved? How can we be involved? And I'm like, how can we get other people involved? How can we share this message? So that's why we started Christ Coffee. Coffee is a very popular thing in our society. There's coffee shops, in every town, and coffee is something that gathers people together. Whether it's if it's a dinner party or if you're having people over for game night and stuff like that, coffee's always made, So we wanted to make Christ Coffee a conversation piece for when you do have those people over. Oh, Christ Coffee, what is that? Da 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 da. And then people can say, well, the reason why we get Christ Coffee is not only because it's good tasting, because it's a premium coffee, but every time I know that when I'm drinking Christ Coffee, that I know a kid is being rescued.
I like that too. If anyone's wondering how they can potentially help the fight in child sex trafficking, of course, not everyone is going to be, bootstrapped on the ground rescuing kids, but that is a little way in which they can help.
Yeah.
David, are there any other ways you can think of that the everyday person can play some sort of role in helping?
Yeah, one of the biggest things is just keeping your eyes open in your neighborhood. Really. I mean, and again, this is why sex trafficking is so prevalent now, because we have isolated ourselves. When I grew up, and it wasn't 100 years ago, but in the 80s and early 90s in my neighborhood, if I did anything in my neighborhood, my mom would get 3 or 4 phone calls, because every neighbor knew what was going on, because everyone was looking out for the kids on our neighborhood. So I mean, it's like I had 15 different parents on my street, because if I went up the street, then across the street, Miss Fig knew what I was doing. Miss Johnson knew what was going on. Miss Brumley knew what was going on. I mean, it was all over. I couldn't, there was always an eye on me somewhere. So that's really important for us to know what's going on in our neighborhood, because people have patterns, and you begin to notice things, and if there's some things that just don't seem right, it's probably because they're not right, and you need to bring that to someone's attention, and I think that's the biggest help. Like you said, Ian, not everyone's going to be boots on the ground. Not everyone knows what to do, but everyone can keep an eye out and can take note of, like, this doesn't seem right, So, yeah. So that would be my biggest advice. If you don't want to buy coffee, and I get that. I mean, Christ Coffee, it's not through the roof expensive, but it's not Folgers cheap.
I was just going to use that analogy.
Yeah. But I will say this, and I'll promote the coffee a little bit. When someone orders a bag of Christ Coffee, we don't go and pull it off the shelf and pack it up in a box and ship it out to them. The first thing that's done, if you were to go online today to www.christ.coffee, and you would find a brew that you liked, Then you would put that order in. Those beans would then be, raw beans would be taken and they would be roasted. And we roast and package the same day. So you're not getting beans that have been sitting on a shelf for a month, or grounds that have been sitting in a bag on a shelf for a month or a week or 3 days. Because honestly, the truth is coffee starts dying after 9 days.
That's quick.
It is. So, you order from Christ Coffee, it's roasted fresh, right? When you order, we start roasting, and then when it's done roasting, it immediately gets packaged, and then it's shipped off either that day or the next day. Most likely, it's always the next day, and then you'll get your order within 5 days. So then you have the freshest coffee that that you can get, and it's gonna taste great, and that when you're drinking it, you're having an impact. It's like people want to do good. Most people want to do good. They want to be able to help in ways that they didn't think they could. And someone, sitting down and drinking coffee can literally have an impact on a child's life.
I think sometimes that's where people get discouraged is, man, I want to help, I want to make a positive impact, but like, what could I possibly do? These problems I see in the world,
oh yeah,
they're just too big for me.
Yeah, it's like, what, as an individual, what can I do? Well, here's my thing. How do you eat an elephant? You eat it one bite at a time. Here's your first bite right here. Grab that bag. Grab a bag. I mean, less than $30, for a pound. I mean, it's great, and you can have a real impact. So, it's an easy way to make a huge impact in a child's life. It's an easy way to spread the gospel. So
that's awesome. And even too, just seeing the word Christ, it's a good seed planter as well for some people.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So let's change courses a little bit. Let's say that you meet with someone, they're not saved. This could be a random interaction at a restaurant or the grocery store. Maybe it's someone who comes into your congregation and they want to speak with you, but you meet with someone, they're not saved. How I understand that it could vary depending on the person and the situation and the context, but a general rule of thumb, how do you conduct yourself as a pastor? And then also, if you could, how could that differ for the everyday person who's not a pastor, but they are a follower of Jesus?
Okay. So definitely two ways. So when it's in the church, most of the time when I've had an interaction, it's through, when people come into the church, I'm always out in the lobby and I greet, everyone that comes in, most of the time. I mean, then I go with the deacons and we pray. And so some people slip by. But what I have found in my years of ministry, most people don't come forward and say, hey, I want to be saved. I want to give my life to Christ. Most people come forward and they're like, I want to be baptized. And then that begins a conversation. So I'm like, okay, well, have you given your life to Christ? They're like, no. So then that begins that conversation that we begin to have and unpack those things.
Why do you think that most people generally want to get baptized first?
Because honestly, most people equate salvation with baptism, and I don't know why. And that's, I have found that, and maybe it's just around here, I don't know, but I have found that to be the case, that people kind of equate that. And that's something that starts a conversation where it's like, okay, baptism's great, and it's an act of obedience, but baptism does not get us to heaven.
Right. I think there's a couple of verses that some people take out of context with that, but maybe you could help me with it. I know there's a verse somewhere in the New Testament about baptism, and essentially what it says is that baptism doesn't save us, or something about. Sorry, I'm still trying to.
No, you're good.
It might be in the book of First Peter, but I'm not positive. But basically, it states
Yeah.
that baptism doesn't save you, not just the baptism of water.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, because baptism's important. Don't get me wrong, but it's an outward expression of what Christ has already done on the inside. So it is important because there's some people that have been saved for years, but they haven't been baptized. And they're like, well, I don't need it for salvation. I'm like, well, yeah, but it's you need to walk in obedience. So you can't say that I'm saved and you're not going to walk in obedience. So it kind of goes hand in hand. So if I'm out and about, when I'll come across people and the conversation comes up, it's just, I don't get preachy to people. But I definitely don't want to miss an opportunity. And I'll tell you, I missed a huge opportunity, and it's one that haunts me. So I was in Walmart one time, and I'll tell you this quick story. I was in Walmart, and my wife, I was buying a Keurig for my wife, and I think it was like for Mother's Day or something. So I'm looking at these Keurig coffee makers or whatever kind of coffee maker. And I don't know a lot about them, so I'm sitting there looking at it. And then this woman is standing beside me and she's looking at it too. And then we just happen to have a quick conversation and, about coffee and that. This was way before Christ Coffee. And, just kind of, back and forth, And, then, I picked up a coffee maker and I have a good day and left. And I thought, oh my goodness, I had an awesome opportunity to really kind of invite this person to church because the door was wide open. And I could have said to her, you know what? I know this place that has great coffee and it's open on Sunday mornings. It's Gill Memorial Baptist Church. You should come sometime and have our coffee. It would have been a great little, and it would have went perfect with the conversation.
And it's also kind of lighthearted.
Yeah, and lighthearted would have broken the ice and all that. And man, it just kills me that I lost that opportunity.
And even if she didn't choose to come to your church, you just mentioning church and coffee, it might have planted a seed for her to go to another church.
Well, and I think what it would have done, not just that, it would have started a different conversation with us.
Right.
Normally what you're going to find when you invite someone to church, you're going to hear them say, oh, I used to go to church. Or, oh, I don't, and then that begins the conversation because they're opening the door for you. Because if you invite someone, say you're talking to someone in Walmart or a restaurant or whatever, and it's maybe it's the waiter or waitress, and you have that you have a conversation, you're building momentum with them, and then you invite them to church. If someone says okay, then where's the conversation go from there?
It's kind of a dead end.
It's over because they said okay, so you're like, okay, great. Oh, hope I see you there. But if they want to talk to you more about it, they're going to give you their backstory. They're going to be like, well, I used to go to church, but da 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 da, or well, that place, da 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 da. So that's when unsaved people are giving us the opportunity to share with them. And oftentimes we don't take it because we're just missing out on the simple opportunities. And I tell people all the time, it's so easy to invite people to church, because then it's just a lighthearted thing. Hey, come to church. But then sometimes they're giving you the green light to say, well, I want to talk to you more about this. So this is why I don't go to church, or this is why I don't go to your church, or whatever it is. So we have to pick up on those clues. The best thing I like to do is one of the things I like to do. Like if we go out to a restaurant or something like that, it's like talking to the waiter, the waitress is like, hey, is there anything can I pray for you? I appreciate your service. Can I pray for you? and it begins a conversation.
Yeah, I have a couple friends who have started implementing that, and that's
Yeah.
something I want to do more. I kind of oftentimes I stray away from talking about the Lord or inviting people to church because there's this fear inside of me where I don't want to make them feel weird, or I don't want them to get turned off and then they don't want to have a conversation with me anymore. And that's something that I need to grow in a lot. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, I think it's fairly easy to, preach or whatever on social media, but to like have those in-person conversations, it's probably more fruitful anyways.
Yeah.
And I need to grow in that, to be honest.
Yeah. And it's, it's something that can be, it can be difficult, but it's not impossible. I think the more you do it, the more you have those simple conversations, the easier it gets. Just like asking someone, hey, can I pray for you? I mean, it just, it can open a door, I think one of the things that people, they get scared about is they're thinking, man, they're going to ask me a question and I don't know how to answer it. And I think the best thing for a Christian to do, if that happens, just say, I don't know. Don't try to fake it till you make it. Just say, I don't know. But you know what? That's a good question. And I'm going to look that up. I'm gonna try to find it. I'm gonna find an answer for it, but I don't know right off the top of my head.
Yeah, this is the wrong place to be trying to fake it till you make it, because you could either rub someone the wrong way or lead them astray.
Yeah. And the thing about it is, we want to be honest with people. Listen, we don't have the answers. When I preach messages, when I talk to people, when I counsel people, the truth is that they know and that I know is I don't have the answers, but I'm pointing them to the one that does have the answers. Because if I had the answers, I'd be like, come listen to me. But I don't. So my position is I'm pointing people to Jesus. He's the one that's going to help your marriage. He's the one that's going to help your job situation. He's the one that's going to help you with your kids. He's the one that's going to help you to be a better dad, a better husband, a better friend, a better follower. That's all Jesus. I can give you tips, but Jesus can give you answers. And that's my thing. So when I'm talking to someone in the public square, I'm wanting to just share with them. I'm wanting to kind of see where they're at so I can know how to point them. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. I'm not trying to give them the answers. I'm trying to point them to the one who has the answers. And God's going to use me, but I have to, there's some things I have to do first to try to see where they're at. And I think that's why it starts with simple stuff like just inviting someone to church, because then you're going to find out real quick. You're going to find out real quick what they believe. They're either going to be like, no, I go to church across town. And then you know, like, okay, well, you're good. Or, boy, that we need to have some more talks. Or you're gonna hear about how they've been hurt by a church, or things like that. So I think a simple question. That's why inviting someone to church is a perfect way to start a conversation, and it's non-threatening. You're talking to your waiter or your waitress, and obviously you live in the same town where they're at because they're working there. I'm sure a waiter or waitress isn't driving an hour and a half to work, but you can, say, hey, I'd love to invite you to our church, but man, don't tip $1 when you leave. You better be a good tipper.
Sure.
You better be above 15%,
right?
Be hovering around that 18 to 20. Don't be a cheap Christian, man. You'd hate to lose someone over, a couple bucks. So,
for sure, that's funny. So if you hear people say that they used to go to church but they don't anymore, what's one of the most common reasons why? Once you start to dig a little bit, would it be something such as church hurt, or maybe they went to college or got exposed to a different worldview?
Most of the time it's hurt. Most of the time it's hurt. Most of the time it's hurt. And I've heard that, and I've heard that numerous times. It's because of hurt. And in defense of for pastors, some of it's just ridiculous. Like I knew a couple, and they came forward, and this wasn't me. It wasn't at this church. It was a church I was attending at the time. So there was a couple that came forward. They joined the church, and the pastor said, "Man, I'm so glad you guys joined the church. You know, we need to go lunch sometime. You know, I'd like to take you guys out to lunch sometime." And so, in his defense, the church was growing. We're kind of growing pretty quick at the time. And he had a lot on his plate. And I mean, people were coming in. People were joining the church. And so, you know, I think a month went by, and they were friends of mine. I said, "Hey, what's going on? I haven't seen you guys at church for a while." They said, "Well, you know, the pastor said that we were going to go lunch, and then he hasn't called to invite us, so we're just done." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Over a hamburger?" I'm like, did you call him and say, "Hey, you know, I mean, why does it have to be one-sided?" You know, I mean, if I broke relationships in my life based on people saying, "Hey, let's do lunch sometime," and that not happening, I probably wouldn't have a lot of friends. Because you know, listen, everyone's intentions are good. Yeah, would I like to go out to lunch every Sunday with people in my church? Absolutely. I love going out to eat. But is that practical? No, I can't do it. Do things come up? Yes, they do come up. You know, are there things that I wish I could do, but time restraints and family obligations? Yeah, absolutely. So you know, my question is, are you holding other people to that same standard? Because if you're holding the pastor to that same standard, you better hold that standard to everyone in your life. And they don't. You know, and this is I don't know, maybe sound like whiny pastor. But this is some of the things I'm like, don't hold me to a different standard. I'm just like you. I'm not any better, any worse. Yeah, and I still have obligations. I still have stuff that comes up. I still have stuff that happens on a daily basis almost that I haven't planned for, you know? And like I tell my church this all the time, and I'm this may be the secret's out, but I can promise you this, and it's not just me. It's probably almost every church. The pastor is literally probably about the last to know. The last to know. Betty Sue's in the hospital. "Pastor, you visit Betty Sue?" "No." "Why?" "Well, she's been in the hospital for a week." "Well, man, no one told me. I didn't know." I mean, I'm not a mind reader, you know?
Right.
You know, so we put this standard on pastors thinking that they should know everything at every time, and people get hurt because they think a pastor is and they won't admit it. But I would say most people, you know, like, "Hey, he should know what's going on." Well, if you don't know what's going on in everyone's life, how do you think I'm going to know what's going on in everyone's life? Do you think I get an update every Monday? This is what happened Sunday afternoon with Bill and Sue, and this is what went on with little Timmy, and this I have no idea what's going on. You know, I mean, you know, unless it's on Facebook, unless someone calls me, I really don't know. You know, I get fed information the same way you get fed information. So if you just found out about it, I probably haven't found out about it yet, because I'm telling you, a lot of times pastors are the last to know of what's going on outside of it, because we're so wrapped up in the church. Oftentimes we don't realize what's going on outside of the church. And I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying that's the reality, because I have, you know, pastors have so much to deal with the church. We're looking at finances and budgets and ministry and, you know, positions that need to be filled and, you know, and all that stuff, you know. And so sometimes when it comes to visiting Betty Sue in the hospital, I didn't know. Like in the first church that I pastored, I worked a full-time job. I was bivocational. I worked a full-time job in another state.
How in the world did you make that work?
Yeah, I don't know. But I did it for 6 years. I mean, it was tough. And, they'd be like, Pastor, why can't you be at the church cleanup on Saturday? Well, because I work. I have a full-time job, and Saturday is one of the days that I work. Well, your other pastor was retired. Your other pastor was 70 years old, and he was retired. I'm like, I'm 33, and I've got 2 kids, and I've got to work. I can't make it on the $125 a week that you're giving me. So it's like, you have to understand, I can't just drop what I'm doing. Like, I have to answer to a boss, and he expects me to be there on Saturday. He expects me to stay late. He expects me to, there were days like I'd have to drive to Oklahoma to drop off a part, so it's like, I can't be everywhere all the time.
That's a good, at that period of time in your life, that's a good biblical principle that you had to adhere to, as in submitting to authority. You still had, like, even though you're a pastor and you're preaching or you're pastoring to people, you still had an earthly boss that you had to heed to. That's really neat. Man, there's a couple directions we could take that with. Is there anything else that you would like to add to that?
Not really, but yes, I guess let me say this. The grace that is extended to you is the grace that you need to extend to others. A pastor is a human being that has the same demands and the same stresses that you have in your life. We're not shielded from that. If you want to honestly, if you want to know the truth, and again, I'm not saying this like, oh, feel sorry for your pastor, but like I told my church, I think it was 3 Sundays ago, I said, I'm the most popular person in this church. I said, and I'm the one that takes all the hits. So I'm out in front, and you guys don't get to see the arrows that hit me. You don't get to see the mud that hits me. You don't see the stuff that comes at me.
When you say mud and arrows, are we talking physical, such as demands, ridicule from people, or spiritual?
Well, it's a whole cornucopia of things, if you will. I mean, there's physical, there's spiritual. How you going to tear a church up?
From the inside.
Yeah. You hit families and you hit the pastor. How many churches think about this? If a pastor has a moral failure, do you know the hurt that hits that church, and and the recovery time that it takes? It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I've never experienced that firsthand, so I wouldn't know, but I can assume it would definitely drive some families away from ever going to church again.
Yeah. I wasn't there, but there was a church, and I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but I know that the pastor was just at his wit's end, and he had been hurt in that, and he got up in the pulpit, and he was just ripping people.
Why?
I mean, just calling them out, and just you this and you this, and it damaged that church for years.
And I'm sure everything he was saying was factual, but that's not the way you go about it.
No, not at all. But he was so hurt that he's like, the pain that has been inflicted on me, I'm gonna do it back.
Right.
Not biblical at all. Horrible. But my thought goes back to that situation, and I think about, had he just been loved on a little more, or cared about a little more, or felt that he was appreciated a little more. Most pastors don't leave churches because of money. Most pastors leave churches because they feel unappreciated.
I'm thinking of a pastor I know. He's definitely, and I don't know the half of it. He's definitely taken some arrows for sure. And so, I guess you're bringing to my attention one thing I should pray for. Is just that, like you said, he gets loved on a little more, perhaps.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so as a pastor, you have a lot of demands, a lot of responsibilities.
Yes.
Again, it's not just showing up one day a week and then you kick your feet up and relax the other 6. So most people, they're not pastors, but perhaps they could still take some value from you, because majority of people listening to this, they still live busy lives between work,
absolutely.
family, whatever. So how would you potentially balance some of this? Like, you have a family. How do you still make time for your family? Maybe if there's any hobbies you have, whatever. How do you make time for that with all of the demands that your job presents?
So one of the things I do is and this sounds kind of corny or cliche, but I just hand my schedule over to the Lord every day. You know, and there are some days, like Mondays for me, are kind of a take a deep breath day.
Well, man, it's Monday right now at the time of this.
Yeah. So I'm thinking this podcast is going to be a part 2, because I think we're going to go for a while. But anyway, I just really kind of, like I said in our prayer when we opened up, this is the day that the Lord has made, and I will be glad and rejoice in it. I don't bring my agenda to God and say, hey, I need you to take care of this. I just come to God and say, okay, this is my day, Lord. Well, this is your day, and there's some things I need to do. Can you guide me through this? Because, that just has always been there for me, and my family outside of my relationship with Christ is my most important thing. Because if I don't take care of my family, I don't have I can't do ministry. Mm-hmm. Like if my wife is neglected and my kids are neglected, then I have failed. I have failed the people that God has entrusted to me to minister to first.
I really like that, because there's a verse in 1 Timothy, and it's talking to pastors. If they can't manage their own household, how are they going to manage the house of God? Yeah.
So and that's what I've always done. I've always made sure and had this in the back of my mind. If I can't minister to my family first, then if I don't minister to my family and I get a divorce, I can't. There's nothing I can do. I'm not gonna. I can't minister to anyone else, So, and I'll be honest with you, it's important for pastors, take a vacation, leave town, shut your phone off for a week, point the church to Deacon Joe, call Deacon Joe, or call this other pastor. If you're a pastor and you've got a bigger church and you have other people on staff, just take a breath, man, and just go somewhere where you can relax and enjoy time with your family, So, and that's something that we've always done, and it doesn't have to be huge, expensive things, We just we've just always made a point to get out, because ministry, I think a lot of people don't understand this, that the wives, a pastor's wife takes a lot of stuff too, because like there'll be people that go to my wife to complain about what I'm doing. And
I wonder how that makes her feel, because that's her husband, you.
Well, yeah. Yeah, so it's really hard on her too, and with me, it's like, it bothers her more than it does me, because I mean, I've been in the ministry now for 20 21 years. So, I mean, I've had everything thrown at me. So so I'm used to it. And I have a wonderful church. Don't get me wrong. I have a wonderful church. Most of the stuff that happens to me now is from people outside of the church.
Sure.
That will comment and comment about our church or accuse me of things, and that's fine. I mean, it happens. It's par for the course. But, there's like the first church that I pastored, and I was there for 6 years. But there was a time like I'd go to work, and one of the church ladies knew when I would go to work, so she would come over and just unload on me to my wife, and that would just kill. It kills your wife. Because she's taken those hits. And someone recently said to Rachel, she said, "Yeah, you don't know what it's like to have someone not like your husband." And she laughed, and she's like, "Are you kidding me?" She's like, "I know exactly what that's like, and more so than anyone."
Mm-hmm.
Do
you wish that you could shield her from some of that?
Yeah, I try to do a lot of that. You always try to, and and with your kids too. My youngest son is graduating from high school, so especially when the kids were in school, just, trying to help them from that, I don't need my kids to defend me. And sometimes they were probably put in places where they had to, without my knowledge. And as I would try to shield them, they try to shield me also.
Right.
From that.
Do your kids go to a public school or a private school?
So we homeschooled our kids up until high school. And I personally, I love homeschooling, but I really wanted the kids to go to high school, for the simple fact that high school is not so much about the school. It's you're learning how to deal with society. Mm-hmm. You're learning how to deal with people, and how to handle things. And some people would agree with me. I mean, hey, if we had a great private school or something like that, and I could afford it, I'd probably, send them to a private school. But our kids that have graduated and went on to school, they end up going to private colleges, to really nurture their faith in that. But so yeah, it was kind of a mixed bag. We had homeschool, and then I felt that they were prepared to go to high school where they could stand their ground.
Exactly what you did with your kids. That's precisely what I've wanted, what I would like to do with my kids someday. Yeah. As long as financially we could stick it, I'd love to homeschool. Well, my wife homeschool through elementary, middle school, and then send them to preferably a public high school, just because they do need that exposure. I know kids or people who are Christians homeschooled their entire life, and again, great people, they just don't have the skills to defend the faith. Yeah.
And also, I mean, like my daughter was an athlete, and I wanted to give her opportunities. Yeah. So she was able to, compete competitively at soccer, and she was able to get a scholarship.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, there's just little things about it that, that I wanted them to be able to, like I said, to defend their faith, but also to be witnesses in that. Because listen, man, that high school needs good, solid Christian kids,
for sure,
standing up for their faith, and really, I think, listen, I'm not an educator. Okay. I'm just, this is off the cuff. I think most of a child's learning is done K through 8. I think once you get to high school, it's not that you know everything, but like if the building blocks and the basics are there, you're good.
I would say I would agree with you. At least 80%, if not more, of the things that I learned in school that I still use to this day, K through 8.
Yeah,
for sure.
So let me ask you a question.
Go for it.
Okay. So you are heading to Southwest Baptist.
Yeah.
Why?
Couple reasons. One, first off, a door to baseball was opened. So this past winter, I reached out to about 15 different universities, both public and private, in-state, out-of-state. Southwest Baptist was the only door that opened.
Yeah.
So that's just first and foremost. But it just happened to be a great university. And even going into the process of emailing all of these, baseball programs,
Yeah.
Southwest Baptist was definitely one of my top picks.
Yeah.
And so I'm really grateful for it. It's not like, man, I really didn't want to go there, but it's the only door that opened. Like Southwest Baptist was one of the ones I want to go to. I've never been to a Christian school before. Like I grew up going to public school, and hey, I'm grateful for it. I went to a community college for 2 years. I've never been to a private institution. And so my freshman year, I'll be taking Introduction to Old Testament and New Testament. Like, I'm super excited for classes like that.
Yeah.
It's not going to be like I don't have to worry about navigating like frats and bunch of parties and stuff.
Mhm.
I'm sure that there will still be people who are worldly there.
There
will be, but I can count on meeting a lot of good, faithful brothers and sisters in Christ as well. So, another cool thing too, because I've gotten to speak with the baseball coaches briefly. Like the music that they play, they're not even allowed to play secular music during practices or games and stuff. So I went to a baseball game and it was all like, clean or Christian type of music. So that's really cool too. But like I said, I've never had a formal Christian education before.
Yeah.
I don't want to say this is all self-made or self-taught, for instance, because I've had plenty of people along the way. Like I've had pastors. My girlfriend has been very, very huge in my spiritual growth. I've had other people, Bible studies, but having a structured education, I am excited to see what that looks like. So I can yap. I can go on and on. There's a lot of things I'm excited for.
Yeah, SBU is a cool school. I mean, I love their new president. Well, he's not new anymore, but such a great guy. My niece graduated from there, so she played softball all 4 years. But I was just wondering because I like SBU, but I really favor HLGU, Hannibal.
Okay, Hannibal LaGrange.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So did you ever reach out to Hannibal?
I did, but I got no response. So
all right.
Yeah.
All right.
But
well, Hannibal, that's on you. You're missing out on a great player right here. Oh.
Hey, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
SBU, they're a D2 school and a really competitive conference. They have some good baseball teams there. So
yeah, they do.
I mean, Central Missouri's in their conference, and last season they had 3 guys drafted. One of them's in the Cardinals organization right now. So
yeah,
competitive conference. I'll play some good baseball for sure.
Good, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, when did you give your life to Christ?
Okay, I'd say initially 2020. So I was 16, going on 17 years old.
Yeah,
that was the lowest, darkest moment in my life. I was smoking marijuana, cussing a lot. I was trying to be a bit of a womanizer. I was walking in a lot of different types of sin.
Yeah.
And my high school baseball coach, one day at school, he gave me a FCA Bible. And
wait, separation of church and state, though.
I mean, hey, you're right. I mean, I could pay it forward and do the same thing.
Absolutely, man.
But
FCA is a great organization.
Yeah, and I like the FCA Bible because, and I'm not trying to promote FCA specifically, but they have these like reflection questions. Throughout the Bible, and having those reflection questions, that was super important for me. It was helpful because instead of just reading through the Bible, skimming through it, not gaining a whole lot of knowledge, I could read the questions and it would be asking me about the passage, and then I could go back and like review what I just read, and it would help me think deeper about it. So I started reading that Bible, and for me, it was never a rapid transformation. It was just like, I'm trying to think of an analogy. Like I have some sort of sledgehammer or pickaxe, and I'm just like slowly chipping away at the stone.
Yeah.
Just bit by bit, I started to cuss less. I began to wean myself off of marijuana. Like I wasn't lusting as much. It was just slowly but surely. I got into a couple Bible study groups, and yeah.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Sweet. All right. So you have mentioned that you are in a relationship with a young lady.
Yes, going on 2 years this summer.
2 years. Let me ask you this.
Okay.
So as a man
Okay.
who is wanting to honor God with all that he does, right?
Right.
Is that a good assumption?
That's a good
Okay.
assumption.
What boundaries have you put up so that you don't fall into a physical relationship that is not honoring Christ with your girlfriend?
That's a very good question. So, like, for instance, one thing is if we're hanging out on like a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, and we take a nap, like that's always on the couch. It's not like in our bedroom. Because her and I live about an hour apart from each other.
Yeah.
Most weekends I'll stay there, but like we're always on separate floors. So she'll be in her bedroom, I'll sleep in the basement. Like that's a very clear boundary that we've set.
Yeah.
And her parents enforce as well.
Good.
So that's just a couple to name a few. And it's not always easy. Like her and I definitely have desires at times, for sure. But
you are human beings.
We are human beings.
Yeah.
I have a past. She does not, but we are waiting for marriage.
Good deal. Yeah, I think a lot of people say that, but then if you're not putting up the boundaries and making them known, then it's easy to slip into, temptation and then to give in to temptation. So
you're right. Even if you're a Christian, you still have to like monitor that, because there are Christians who are dating and they slip and they do way too much.
Yeah.
And there have been moments where we're like, man, like I really wish we didn't have to withhold from that.
Yeah.
But we know that would be a grave mistake if we went too far.
Yeah, and this is one thing, like the world will look and be like, see, you guys did it. I'm like, okay, but you think that like when you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, that all of a sudden your desire to drink and have sex and do it automatically goes away.
I would argue that it's harder sometimes as a Christian, because there are certain things, especially if you came from living in a world of sin.
Yeah.
You can't do those anymore, and those things are fun. There's a reason why you did it.
Yeah, there's a reason why people sin. But and I like what you said, because it's harder because now you have a target on your back. Because now you're not going with the world, you're going away from the world, you're swimming upstream. So it's easier to pick that one out. So, but I'm glad that you guys are doing that. So
thank you.
Kudos, brother.
Yeah, and I'll be asking you some questions down the road, just like relationship advice and stuff like that too, because we're young. She's my first serious relationship. I'm her first serious relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of things that we've had to learn for the first time.
Yeah.
And so
2 years though, man, that's
yeah.
My wife and I, we met and married within a year and 6 months. I'm not one for long engagements.
I agree. Yeah.
I'm not saying you need to go out and propose. I'm just saying.
Sure.
Yeah. Whatever.
I've never understood super long engagements, but I can understand, whether it's a financial thing or like, whether you're trying to finish up college or whatever. But
so what is that going to do with your guys' relationship with you going to college?
Yeah. So, I'm planning on going to college, initially, but the plan is we would like to get engaged and then get married while I'm still in college. And then she would come down to Bolivar, Missouri, where SBU is. Yeah. And we could get a place like right outside campus.
Yeah, my wife and I did that. We got married while we were in college.
Where did you go to college at?
So I started out at UNLV.
That's right. Okay, you said that earlier.
Yeah. So my thought was, and this is, so God was working in me, and I'll be honest with you, man. I got out of high school. I was just floating around, not doing much at all, and I was just working for the weekends, and and I remember, I thought, man, I've got to move. I said, I've got to go somewhere, because I'm just hanging out with the same group of guys. We're just drinking and getting drunk every weekend. And I'm like, I got to do something with my life. And so I went to the public library and looked at Lovejoy's College Guide. And I was never a great student. So I went through there and found the easiest school to get into that accepted D's on a transfer. So that was UNLV. and I went to UNLV and just got to UNLV doing the same thing with just a different group of people. And I was like, okay, so the problem's not the people around me. The problem is me. And at that same time, kind of in all of that, I met Rachel, and she kind of witnessed to me, and you know, ended up moving out of Vegas and giving my life to Christ, and so I had just assumed, like, I'm not going to go to school. I'll be good, and that's when the struggle was, because I was like, I don't want to go to school. You know, I don't want to take a bunch of loans, and I'm not very good at it. And I had a school contact me, Pillsbury College and Seminary, and I was actually pastoring at that time, and they said, "Hey, listen, we have a heart for bivocational pastors, and if you just pay for your books, we won't charge you any tuition."
Wow!
So it's like, well, there's no way I can turn that down. So I graduated from Pillsbury College and Seminary.
Okay,
so,
where's that located at?
Bridgeton,
Missouri.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I play softball in Bridgeton. I've never.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not a very big school. So.
All right. Well, David, there's so much more I'd like to talk to you about, but I know your time is precious, and I also have a bit of a drive back.
Yes.
So before we might have to do a part 2 sometime.
Yeah.
But before we wrap this up, is there anything else you'd like to say on here?
I just want to thank you for coming out and doing this and asking about Christ Coffee, because that's important to us. We want to, preaching is a wonderful thing that I have the privilege of doing, to be able to stand in the pulpit that God has given me to preach His word. But Christ Coffee is something that we want to use to also have a greater impact in the world also. So no, just thank you. And yeah, man, I mean, we could do this for another hour, because I remember the questions. I'm like, yeah, we haven't even touched on some of the stuff. So yeah, thank you, Ian. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And last question: does your church do like Facebook live stream?
Yes, we do. We do Facebook Live every Sunday, and then Rob does. We do Facebook Live for youth, for the youth message too, and those are normally Sunday evenings and Wednesday nights. But yeah, we're I don't take down our sermons, so they're always on our Facebook page, and again, our church is Gill Memorial Baptist Church, and we're in Marshall, Missouri.
Okay, so David, I will put the link to that in the description of the episode.
Yeah, we do not have a website. We just do Facebook.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, David, thank you so much for joining.
All right, thank you, man. I appreciate you, Ian.
I appreciate you too,
yeah,
sir.
This has been fun.
I agree.
Cool. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye, everyone.
See you guys. God bless.
Watch what they say, but don't do what they do. Actions speak louder in spirit and truth. I'm built different. Watch what they say, but don't do what they do. Actions speak louder in spirit and truth. All gas, no brakes. Can't fight fake. Mind over matter. Faith, no cake. Some only complain.